Anything But Hero: The Murder of Actor Robert Crane, 1978. Actor Bob Crane and his friend John Henry Carpenter were united in their keen interest in chasing women at bars, clubs, and parties. When they met in the mid-1960s, Crane was married to his childhood sweetheart Ann Terzian and had 3 children, Robert David, Deborah Ann, and Karen Leslie. He was a high school dropout who loved music and played the drums. He began working as a disc jockey in 1950 at a small radio station in New York State. 6 years later, KNX in Los Angeles hired Crane to be the disc jockey on their morning drive show. The show was a hit, and Crane was earning $150,000 a year by the early 1960s. But he yearned for more. While being a DJ by day, he trod the boards in his off hours as an actor in small theater productions in the Los Angeles area. This opened the door to small television parts, including an episode of The Dick Van Dyke Show and The Donna Reed Show. Crane's big break came in 1965 when he was cast in the starring role of Colonel Robert Hogan on Hogan's Heroes. Crane quit his radio job. The comedy series, which aired on CBS television, was set in a prisoner of war camp during World War II. In it, Hogan led a group of American prisoners who tried to outwit their German guards, Colonel Klink and Sergeant Schultz. The program was a hit, and the role turned Crane into a national television star. Twice, he was nominated for an Emmy Award for Best Performance by an actor in a leading role in a comedy series. By then, John Henry Carpenter was working as a regional sales manager for Japanese electronics giant Sony. As part of his job, he taught customers how to use their new videotape machines. Clients included comedian Red Skelton, film director Alfred Hitchcock, singer Elvis Presley, and actor Richard Dawson, who was appearing on Hogan's Heroes as Peter Newkirk. While Carpenter was paying Dawson a visit on the set of the show one day, the actor introduced him to Crane. The two men became friends. For years, Crane had been taking Polaroids and home movies of his sexual conquests. Carpenter showed Crane how to operate a videocassette recorder, which the television star began using to film his extramarital sexual encounters. His status as a celebrity helped attract women. The image of the family man that he presented to the outside world was in stark contrast to his less-known persona as a man who was becoming increasingly interested in privately documenting his sexual conquests on video. He is said to have paid a doctor to surgically place implants in his private part to look well endowed. In 1970, Crane divorced his wife of 21 years and married his Hogan's Heroes co-star Patricia Olson 4 months later. Hogan's Heroes ended its run in 1971, and the cancellation of the television series began the decline of Crane's career. He briefly starred in The Bob Crane Show, which aired on NBC in 1974 and 1975, where he played a former insurance salesman who went back to school to become a doctor. That series was canceled after only 14 weeks, and Crane turned to the regional dinner theater circuit to earn a living. Carpenter had changed jobs and had begun working as the national sales manager of the Akai Corporation. He would arrange his business trips to coincide with the location of Crane's dinner theater engagements. The two men would generally meet up during the last week of Crane's run. By then, the actor would have had an opportunity to meet many women, and he would share his windfall with Carpenter by introducing him to the women as his manager. For his part, Crane carried his video equipment wherever he went. Some women were filmed and photographed with their consent while others were unaware that their sexual trysts were being taped. One tape showed Crane and Carpenter were having group sex in Texas with a woman that Crane had picked up. On June 6, 1978, Crane began appearing in the play Beginner's Luck at the Windmill Dinner Theater in Scottsdale, Arizona. He was separated from his second wife by then. The theater had rented several apartments for its actors, including one for Crane. On June 25, Carpenter flew to Phoenix on business for the Akai Corporation and to spend 4 days with Crane. The Hogan's Heroes star met him at Sky Harbor Airport and showed Carpenter an album of photos of naked women as they drove to Scottsdale. During his 3 weeks in Arizona, Crane had sex with at least 8 women. Carpenter checked into the Sunburst Motel near Crane's apartment. After Crane's theater performances, the two men would visit bars and nightclubs to meet women. 3 days later, Crane and his co-star, 28-year-old Australian actor Victoria and Barry performed on stage at the Windmill Theatre in the evening. They had been touring together for months in beginner's luck. When the show ended that evening, Crane and Carpenter headed out to Crane's car. They stopped at a nearby gas station to fix a flat tire before heading to Crane's apartment. While they were there, Crane had a loud argument over the telephone with his estranged wife Patty. Crane was not a drinker and did not smoke, but he was itching to go out. Just before midnight he and Carpenter went to a Phoenix nightclub called Bogart's. They met a woman there, called Carol Newell, and decided to go elsewhere for breakfast. Crane phoned Carolyn Bear, another woman whom he had met during his stay in Arizona, and invited her to join them for coffee. On the way to Safari Restaurant, Crane stopped to drop off Carpenter and Newell in Scottsdale so that they could pick up Carpenter's car. After an early morning breakfast, the foursome left the restaurant at 2 a.m. on June 29, 1978. Carpenter brought Newell back to his hotel room and began making sexual advances towards her. Newell rebuffed him and asked that he take her home at 3 a.m. He did. When Carpenter returned to his hotel room, he phoned Crane to see if he had had better luck with Carol Bear. Crane said that he had struck out, too. The next morning, Carpenter checked out of the Sunburst Motel at 8:24 a.m. and returned his rental car at the hotel's Avis counter. He told the agent that it had electrical problems, and then he took a taxi to the Phoenix airport and flew back to Los Angeles on Continental Airlines. He picked up his own vehicle and drove to work. At about 2 p.m. that afternoon, Barry knocked on the door of Crane's ground floor apartment, 132A, in the Winfield Apartments in Scottsdale. There was no answer. She tried the handle and discovered that the door was unlocked. She opened it and stepped inside the two-bedroom apartment. It was dark. She called out Crane's name, but there was no response. Barry thought that perhaps he was at the pool. She opened the curtain that concealed a sliding glass door to the exterior and peered outside. There was no sign of her co-star. Then Barry walked slowly into the bedroom. There was a body curled up on its side in a fetal position in the bed, and an electrical cord was tied around its neck. The wall behind the head of the bed was covered in blood. There was more blood on the sheets, and brain matter was splattered on the pillow. At first, Barry was not sure whose body it was, but she knew that something terrible had happened. She raced out of the apartment looking for help. The first Scottsdale police officer to arrive on the scene was Paulette Casillada. On closer inspection, Barry identified the bloodied body in the bed as that of Bob Crane. Police Lieutenant Ron Dean arrived at about 3 p.m. and took over the investigation. He asked Barry to sit down in Crane's kitchen to write out her statement about finding the body. The telephone rang at 3:15 p.m. and Dean told Barry to answer it but not reveal any information about the presence of a murder victim in the apartment. She picked up the receiver. It was John Carpenter calling. And that is when Dean took the phone from Barry and identified himself as a police officer investigating an incident at Crane's apartment. At first, Carpenter told the investigator that he had last seen his friend at 1 a.m., and then later he said it was actually 2:45 a.m. Unable to get any information about Crane from the investigator, Carpenter phoned Bob Crane Jr. to tell him that something was going on in his father's apartment. Crane Jr. phoned and spoke with Dean, and Carpenter called again at 3:30 p.m. Meanwhile, the police investigation was underway. Crane's body was discovered curled underneath a sheet, dressed in shorts and an undershirt. Although an electrical cord was tied around his neck, he had died from several blows to the head. Blood was found on the inside doorknob of the master bedroom. He had been murdered on July 13, 1978, 2 weeks shy of his 50th birthday. Maricopa County Medical Examiner Heinz Karnichnik found that Crane had been hit at least twice in the side of the head with a heavy object. It had fractured his skull and killed him within a minute sometime in the early morning hours. It appeared that he had been struck with a blunt instrument such as a pipe or a wrench. Crane was beaten to death in his bed by what was initially believed to have been a tire iron or jack handle. The electrical cord, which came from a video camera, was tied on tightly after he died. Who had killed Crane and why? Dean and Case Officer Dennis Borkenhagen searched the apartment for clues. Neither the front door nor the sliding glass door showed signs of forced entry. Oddly, both were unlocked, although Crane was known to keep his doors locked. Either someone had a key or Crane had left the door unlocked. Either way, he likely never saw his killer. The room in which he died was virtually undisturbed, and nothing valuable appeared to be missing. Police found Crane's watch, wallet, money, jewelry, and expensive video and photography equipment, which eliminated robbery as a motive. There were no signs of a struggle or of a murder weapon, although blood that was wiped from the weapon was found on the corner of Crane's bed sheet. Based on the position of the body, it appeared that Crane had been attacked and killed while he slept. In my opinion, he was asleep, he didn't know what hit him, Karnichnig told reporters. Since there were no signs of a struggle or forced entry, police believed that the killer might be someone that Crane knew. The crime was not one of passion over the womanizer, but rather a well-planned attack that took Crane by surprise. As investigators searched the house, they discovered Crane's collection of pornographic videotapes that featured many women with whom he had slept. Some were aware that they were being taped while others only learned of it after Crane died and police informed them. There were also stills of men and women, but no sign of the photo album of pornographic pictures that Crane had shown to Carpenter. They also found a mini darkroom inside one of the apartment's bathrooms and a photo enlarger resting on the back of the toilet. Police decided to try to reconstruct Crane's activities and whereabouts for the last 12 hours before his body was found. They questioned at least 50 of his friends and acquaintances, including his estranged wife Patty, members of the cast of Beginner's Luck, and their friends. It was during this part of their investigation that they learned of his outing the night before and his friendship with Carpenter. Carpenter was also the last person known to have talked to Crane by phone the morning of the slaying. Police interest in Carpenter as a potential suspect grew when they found the rental car on June 30, 1978, that he had used during his 4-day visit. They located the 1978 Chrysler Cordoba at the Avis counter inside the Sunburst Motel. While scrutinizing it, Scottsdale Police Detective Darwin Berry noticed what appeared to be a tiny amount of dried blood on the car's interior on the passenger side. He called Lieutenant Dean to tell him what he had found. A tow truck brought the vehicle to the Arizona Department of Public Safety's compound for examination. Department criminologist Bruce Bergstrom took a closer look at the bloodstain and found that it was from someone who had type B blood. Only about 1 in 7 people have this type of blood, and Crane was one of them. Carpenter was now the prime suspect in his friend's murder. Police also learned from a maid at the Sunburst Motel that she had found a bloody washcloth and pillowcase in his room, but she had not kept the items. The following day, Dean and Borkenhagen flew to Los Angeles to speak to Carpenter. He flew back to Arizona with the 2 police investigators and agreed to answer questions without the presence of a lawyer. It was then that the officers learned about the missing photo album of nude women. Carpenter said that he had seen it in Crane's bedroom the day before the murder, but police never found it. Carpenter returned to California, where Scottsdale police attempted to speak with him again on July 14. Police believed that Carpenter had killed Crane, but Carpenter denied it. "He was my friend," he told officers. "And he was the goose who laid the golden egg for me, in terms of meeting ladies." Carpenter offered to take a lie detector test, which was inadmissible in court, but police refused. The Scottsdale police brought their evidence against Carpenter to Maricopa County State Attorney Charles Hyder. They wanted to obtain an indictment for murder and an arrest warrant to bring their suspect to Arizona for further questioning, but Hyder refused to press charges. Police had been unable to establish physical evidence linking the suspect to the crime. Crane's body was returned to Los Angeles in early July for burial. Family members and more than 200 friends attended the funeral mass held at St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church in Westwood. In November 1980, the Scottsdale police approached the newly elected Maricopa County State Attorney Tom Collins. They urged him to prosecute Carpenter, their key suspect in Crane's murder. He reviewed the evidence in 1981 and agreed with his predecessor's decision that there was insufficient evidence, and there the case rested for nearly a decade. By February 1990, information about the investigation filled 3 6-inch thick binders in the police department. Officers had not given up on closing the case. Richard Romley succeeded Collins as Maricopa County Attorney in January 1989, and in the spring of 1990 he created a special panel of 15 attorneys and investigators to review the case. Scottsdale Police Detective Barry Vassall teamed up with Jim Raines, a former Phoenix police detective who was working as a county attorney's investigator. They began combing through the case looking for new or overlooked evidence. In January 1992, Romley announced that new evidence had been found implicating Carpenter in Crane's murder. They had come to believe that Crane was killed because he was growing tired of Carpenter hanging around with him. Carpenter felt threatened, the theory went, because he saw that his access to women was in danger of being cut off. Carpenter had apparently been seen arguing with Crane at a nightclub days before the murder. The review panel believed that he had crushed Crane's skull with a camera tripod. Police also found it suspicious that Carpenter flew back to Los Angeles the day of Crane's murder. Carpenter was on his way to work at a video repair shop on June 1, 1992 when he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He was jailed without bail in a Los Angeles jail awaiting extradition to Arizona. Before the case against Carpenter, then aged 64, could proceed, he was ordered to stand trial in California in July 1992 on charges of molesting 2 girls. California authorities finally extradited Carpenter to Arizona just before Christmas 1992 to face the murder charge. He was held at the Maricopa County Jail while awaiting a preliminary hearing to decide if there was probable cause that he had murdered Crane. At the conclusion of the hearing in early 1993, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Gregory Martin ordered Carpenter to stand trial on a charge of first-degree murder. He was released on a bond of $98,000. Jury selection for the trial began on September 7, 1994. 12 jurors and 4 alternates were picked from an initial pool of 99 people. Carpenter arrived in court looking relaxed and holding hands with his wife Diane. The trial got underway on September 12, 16 years after Crane was murdered. Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Martin presided. The prosecution presented evidence that the blood found in Carpenter's rental car was type B, the same as Crane's. Of all the people who were believed to have ridden in the car when Carpenter had it, only Crane had type B blood. The new evidence that they offered was a police photograph showing an irregularly shaped dark speck about 1/16 of an inch in diameter on the inside passenger door of Carpenter's rental car. The prosecution's experts who examined the photo said that the speck on the car door was likely to be brain or fat tissue from inside Crane's skull. The defense countered that it was impossible to prove since the actual piece of evidence had been destroyed. In the weeks before Crane's death, he was known to have had 2 tripods with him. Patricia Crane testified that her husband often videotaped himself having sex with women that he met on the dinner theater circuit. She said that he had an extensive video and electronics collection and that he always carried his video equipment with him on road trips, including several camera tripods. Only one was found in Crane's apartment after his murder. Was the other one the murder weapon? Forensic investigators testified that they smashed a small photography tripod into a clay model of a human head. They discovered that it produced a wound similar to Crane's. Expert witness Rod Englert of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office in Portland, Oregon, said that based on blood spatters and other evidence, Crane was hit in the head at least 3 times. Blood stains on his bed sheet showed 2 parallel lines slightly curving inwards to a V that were consistent with a tripod. Hand smear marks on Crane's upper back indicated that he had been beaten before the electric cord was tied around his neck. This led investigators to believe that Carpenter had beaten the actor with one of the tripods and then disposed of the murder weapon. To prove the existence of the tripod, the prosecution showed the jury a video of Crane and Carpenter having sex simultaneously with the same woman. It also illustrated the relationship between Crane and Carpenter, who shared their sexual exploits. Lawyers argued that Carpenter had killed Crane because Crane wanted to end the friendship that gave Carpenter access to women who were attracted by the actor's fame. Robert Crane Jr. testified that in the weeks before his death, his father complained that Carpenter had become a nuisance and that the actor wanted to end the friendship. Defense lawyer Stephen Avila, however, argued that a jealous husband or boyfriend could have also had a motive to kill Crane. Walter Lee Fetty testified that he was helping move furniture in Crane's apartment complex the morning of the murder. He saw a man step out of Crane's apartment, look around, and go back inside. The man emerged a second time shortly before the body was found. He asked Fetty for a light for his cigarette and spoke with him briefly. He also complained that the moving truck was blocking his car. The man was 5 feet 9 inches, had black hair with silver streaks, and was wearing black slacks, black loafers, and a white shirt. Police didn't question Fetty about what he saw until a friend of his contacted police years later. Carpenter's 6-week trial ended on October 31, 1994. After deliberating for 2.5 days, the jury acquitted him. Carpenter's wife Diane sat on the bench behind her husband, sobbing, it's over," when the verdict was read. After nearly 2 decades of being under suspicion, a jury had cleared him in connection with his friend's death. Accusations that the Scottsdale Police Department had bungled the high-profile investigation did not end, however. Barry, who found Crane's body, did not tell police until later that she and Crane had slept together twice. She was allowed to answer the telephone at the crime scene, likely before technicians had had a chance to dust it for fingerprints. Police never searched the large handbag that she carried with her. They placed the evidence that they collected into one large bag, which could potentially taint individual items. Crane's son and his business manager were allowed to take items from the apartment the day after the murder, but before the apartment's contents had all been checked for possible fingerprints. Detectives quickly focused on Carpenter as a prime suspect but did not search his hotel room. Carpenter did not savor his victory for long. He died in 1998,